Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And welcome to Laughbox.
Laughbox, the podcast for the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. And now, here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Well, here we are, ready for Laughbox, and I'm calling this episode It's About Time because I did this interview with David Tarvin last year at the conference, and then I lost it. And the other day I was going through my computer and I found it, and I was like, YAHTZEE! So it's about time that we hear from David Tarvin. A really great interview. We share a little bit about things he shared in his talk at the conference last year. Super smart guy, super funny guy. We hit a lot of different things in the conversation. I know you're going to dig it. I am so glad that I finally found it. So, without further ado, here's our good buddy, David Tarvin, sharing his huge brain. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Laughbox, the official podcast of the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. And today, awesome day, live here at the conference. I had his brother on the show, but this is going to be even better because he's the smarter, more educated Tarvin. I get to talk to David Tarvin a little bit about his session he did today and some of the work he does in humor. So welcome, my friend, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Now, obviously, we spent a little time together. I know your backstory, but for our listeners, if you could share a little bit about who you are.
All right. Well, I teach at Texas A&M University. I've been there for 5 years. I teach in the communication department, courses like public speaking, intercultural communication, and most recently I developed a course on the rhetoric of humor. So I wanted to come to AATH to talk about that. And before A&M, I traveled the world. I lived in Costa Rica, China, Mexico. I did my PhD at LSU. That is probably where I experienced the most culture shock, was Louisiana. So definitely a fun experience.
Right. Hey, and I want to talk about your session here, but some of the other stuff I think is interesting as well that we can throw in there. Before we get into our conversation, I'll just ask you a random question, just to get our conversation going. So if you could go back in time.
Yeah.
To your younger life and do something different, what would you do?
Whoa.
What would you go back to and what would you do different?
Wow. I was driving after high school graduation, I drove down to Florida with my friends for spring break.
Mm-hmm.
I was going about 88 and a 55, got pulled over in Kentucky, and I was forced to go to court.
Mm-hmm.
And I had too many points on my driver's license, so at court they made me either lose my license or go take classes.
Uh-huh.
So I had to take classes. By taking those classes, I found a new university, Morehead State, and that's where I ended up going for my undergraduate. I was planning on going to a different university.
Uh-huh.
For years, that ticket haunted me. My insurance was high. Any problem I had at Morehead, I was like, it's because of that stupid speeding ticket. I should be at Wright State where I belong, back in Ohio. So for many, many years, if you would have asked me that question, I would have said that speeding ticket.
Uh-huh.
But because of that speeding ticket, I've had the privilege to see the world. Because
Uh-huh.
Morehead is where I met Dr. Frank, who I spoke about a little bit in my session. And he really changed my life. So that would not be the case. So I'll start with a not example. Oh, man. There was one time my mom came home from work and I was taking a nap, and she said, you take a lot of naps. And I said, that's because you're always in a bad mood when you get home from work. And my dad later told me that crushed my mom.
Uh-huh.
So if I could change anything in my younger years, it was not saying that to her.
Oh, that's sweet, though. That you go back and not hurt your mom's feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's nice. That's nice.
That's the thing that I stay up at night sometimes, like right before you go to bed. It's like, man, why did I say that to mom?
And relive. I mean, that's the thing with life. I mean, you can't go back and change things. All you can do is, think, oh, opportunity comes up again, I'm going to do that a little different. So
Right, yeah.
that's awesome. Now, the work that you're doing in education, I mean, because I think it's pretty cool that you shared this morning that in your classes, like it's a lecture hall with 300 students, and so many other professors only get like half their students there, but your students there all the time. I mean, what drives them there?
Great question. I think a lot of that is that they're afraid I'm going to call on them. So the idea that I'm going to make a joke out of them, about an experience they've had, I often draw a lot of people that I meet, so they're afraid, like there's nothing worse to them than finding out that I drew a picture of them and used them as an example in lecture, and that's the day they decided not to show up.
Right.
And so they start showing up more and more. So whereas a lot of professors tend to have a lot of students at the beginning of the semester that by the end trickles out, my classes tend to be the opposite, where I have, the normal amount at the beginning of the semester, but as the semester progresses, more people are coming.
Like people that aren't even registered for the class?
Sometimes.
That's hilarious. They're like, who are you? You're like, I don't know. Everybody said this was just a great class to sit in on. Yeah. I got it's Netflix or this class.
Yeah, exactly. For Halloween this past year, I was a squirrel in a full squirrel outfit, and I was walking across campus to my class, and I get there, and there's more people than normal, like a lot more people, like all the seats were taken, and I'm
right.
like, what is going on? Did something big happen? And I guess I made the campus story, the Instagram account, because they were like, we saw you, we found out you were a professor, then we saw you walking on campus, so we just followed you to your classroom to see.
That's amazing. I mean, like with thinking about the social media aspect of word spreading on campus like that. I mean, because all my college was non-traditional. I mean, I was in the Navy, I went to night school and stuff, and we didn't have social media back then. Back in the day, everything was like, on stone tablets and Post-its. That's how we live. That's actually still how I live. It's really pretty sad. But that's pretty amazing that somebody takes a picture, is like, hashtag nutty professor, and, I don't know if that was the hashtag or not.
I hope it was, because that's brilliant right there.
But that would be, and then everybody's like, we got to go to this class. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it just think about the whole learning portion, and using humor in that. I mean, I would think that it's got to not only make your students a little more engaged, but I would think that it helps in their retention as well.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Other professors will tell me, oh, a student was talking about this concept in class and they explained it so well. And I was like, how did you learn that? And they, oh, Dr. Tarvin told us about his dog that did this and that. And I just remember that story. Or Dr. Tarvin told me about this event. And so professors are coming up to me and they're telling me stories. And I'm like, how did you hear that? That's that's me. That's my story. You can't be telling my story.
You need to you copyright all your stories. So
Exactly.
If you hear of another professor telling your story, say, hey, copyright infringement, buddy.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. You might be senior and a little more tenured, but that's my story.
Exactly.
Well, because I mean, I just I know that in my personal life, humor is a great connection tool, and I had an opportunity to talk to a guy when I was doing my master's thesis, and I was on humor and education. His name is Father John Noss, and he actually taught a class in the philosophy of humor. And something he said, in our interview, and he's passed away now, but he shared that he looked at humor as humor. What he said was, humor renders learners benevolent. And that always stuck with me. When I was teaching Navy classes or teaching that if I were able to use it, then it was just such a different connection with the people around me. And I would think that you've got to be so grateful that you've got that gift where you're able to connect with your students like that.
I do. I am so thankful. I'm right at that cusp of that age though, where students. I've always thought of myself as with that generation for the last 10 years. But I had a student that studied abroad with me, and we were talking about her parents, and I found out that both of her parents are younger than I am. And I'm like, wait, I could be your father? So this whole time I'm thinking I'm your crazy older brother, when really I'm your crazy older uncle.
Right. That's really funny. Because that is a transition point in your life. I'm going to tell you, because I remember teaching a class, and I made a reference to the TV show Cheers, right? And I was I basically said, every class got a Cliff Clavin in it. And everybody looked at me like, Cliff Cliff Clavin, who's that? And I was like, from the TV show Cheers. And for me, in my head, Cheers had just gone off the air yesterday.
Yeah,
but it had been over a decade, right? And so everybody was looking at me like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I was like, oh, I've crossed the threshold. I've crossed that generational divide. My humor is not relevant anymore.
Exactly. I actually read Harry Potter for the first time in 2018 because all of my students were like, you do all these popular cultural references, but you've never done Harry Potter. And I'm like, well, that wasn't my generation. And they were like, well, make it your generation. And now I include Harry Potter.
Oh, kudos to you. I mean, for actually, asking the questions and then actually going out and I'm going to learn, because I think a lot of people, they do get stale because they don't stay, current, especially when you're dealing with a younger crowd. I mean, if you're dealing with your same crowd, I mean, you can use the same stuff all the time, but I mean, thinking about that and you staying relevant,
right,
and making, and making your stuff relevant, that's awesome. Now let's go a little bit into, your presentation this morning, because I just thought it was awesome. One that you use so many different things to explain humor and how humor works. So let's talk about a little bit about the rhetoric of humor. This, throw it out there. I'm just gonna now you don't have to give your whole presentation over again because but let's talk about it. I mean, where did the concept come from, and then we can delve into it a little bit.
Sure. So let's see. I was wanting to teach a course on humor, and the department chair was like, but why? And I was like, because it has persuasive capabilities. And he's like, oh, it does? And I was like, yes, it does. And then I was like, oh my gosh, why did I just say that? I don't have the research to back that up at that moment.
Right.
And so I left that meeting running to the computer to make sure that I didn't just make a lie to my department head. And there's plenty out there. I mean, not a lot out there, but there's enough out there that I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. My brother Drew, who's an improviser and stand-up comedian, he came to my class a couple of times to guest lecture. And what I was finding at the end of the year, so he would teach for one class, 1 hour out of the 15-week semester. My teaching evaluations at the end would say, Drew's class was great. Oh, I just love Drew. Drew was awesome. And
you're like, I was there the whole time.
Yeah. He is no longer allowed in my classroom. Like, this is my classroom.
That's hilarious.
But he's doing something, right? Mm-hmm. And they are captivated by it. They're paying attention. And he would try, before he'd come guest lecture, he'd be like, what are you teaching this week? And I'd tell him. And so he'd incorporate that into the improv activities. And then towards the end of the semester when it's exam time, they'd be like, is it like that time your brother told us yes and like we should have that mindset? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, right? So after I told my department head that I wanted to teach this course, and then I had to run and make sure that I was factual in my statements, I was like, actually, this is a great area of research. And so then I really dived into it. I focus on Aristotle because I think he's the most well-known philosopher from ancient Greece. Gorgias is one of my favorites, but I start with Aristotle. But
nobody's heard of Gorgias.
Nobody knows who Gorgias is.
Who the hell's Gorgias?
Yeah, he's the first lawyer, but nobody likes that, right? And so I start with Aristotle, and he has the rhetorical triangle. And I was looking at several different things, and I'm thinking, okay, does humor fall in logic? Does humor fall in credibility? Does humor fall in suffering? Okay, it's not suffering. It must be these other two. Oh, it's definitely here in logic. And then I'm starting to do more research and starting to see, well, actually, humor and suffering are they go hand in hand, because as Kenneth Burke says, the communication scholar, it's the corrective to tragedy is comedy. And so then I was like, okay, it relates to pathos, to suffering. It relates to ethos or credibility. It relates to logos, obviously, with incongruous logic. And there's something missing, though, because Aristotle doesn't really mention humor too much. When he talked about humor, he thought it was more manipulative than it was persuasive. But I think that's an area that we can dive into and develop and discuss. Is it manipulative, or is it actually just persuasion? And so in my session this morning, I talked about a Serbian group that used humor called Otpor, and they used humor to overcome the suffering that was placed on them by the dictators in Serbia. And they used logic, they used credibility, they used pathos, but all in a humorous way.
Right.
And so that's what I was calling humos.
Right. Which I love, the fact that you brought out, kind of made it your own term. You're like, humos, David Tarvin, TM, like that.
Right.
Got humos. You can have
You got
T-shirts
it,
like
that.
that. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, that's good.
I have
humos.
little T-shirts that say that. I definitely have those at the conference next year.
Oh,
Should
that's
have
a
had them
good
this year.
idea. Oh, yeah, that would be perfect. Man, I need to think about branding.
Yeah, well, I have lots of great ideas. I suck on execution. So, can we delve a little bit into the rhetoric triangle and like an example of each one of those and how they humor plays into ethos, logos, and pathos?
Yeah.
Can we get in because it's fascinating to me because thinking about that in persuading people. And living life a little bit differently. So let's start with your favorite one.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, the thing that I find most interesting is that Aristotle is responding to Plato in the Socratic dialogues, and so Plato says that rhetoric is a negative thing because you can get people to do anything without any justice behind it. And so he found it to be manipulative. And so Aristotle said, no, if you have ethos, if you have credibility, you will use the other two, logic and pathos or emotions, in a way that is beneficial to society. And so I think that's why he was kind of against humor, is because it hurt your credibility in ancient Greece. My favorite of them, or what I propose to my students, is I ask them, which do you think is most persuasive? And they always say logos. They're like, logic is most persuasive. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the least persuasive of all of them.
Right.
I say, okay, how many of you have a test, say tomorrow, and so logically that you have to study for this test? That's logos. Logically, I need to stay home tonight and study for this test.
Right.
But then your friend calls and your friend says, come on out with us to the bar. It's such and such birthday. They're using their own credibility, right? I'm your good friend. I'm not trying to hurt you. Come to the bar with us. Be friends, right? So they're using that ethos. And that typically doesn't do too much either. But then they say, think FOMO, right? You're going to miss out on life if you don't come out tonight. And all of a sudden they're afraid of that suffering, that they're going to miss something. And they're no longer studying for that exam. That pathos is what persuaded them to go out there. And the example that I often use is Hurricane Katrina, a very tragic event, but I think that the way that we respond to it is extremely humorous because, as you know, I went and got my PhD from LSU, so Hurricane Katrina, the effects of it are still, you can still see the effects of Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana. So it was what a lot of people were talking about. How in the next big event like a hurricane do we evacuate people? Because thousands of people died that they could have hopefully been able to persuade them to leave. And I talk about the logos. So logos, the logic, they had weather forecasters saying, this is going to be one of the worst storms, 100-year storms in Louisiana history. You need to leave. It's going to be bad, and people won't leave. And then they use the ethos of the mayor. So the mayor goes on and he tries to convince people to leave. And, some folks did, but not a great majority of them. And then the police department used pathos, and they went to individuals with permanent markers and said, write your social security number on your arm, because when we find your body, not if, but when we find your body, we need to be able to identify you. And finally people left New Orleans. And so I think that's absurd that we don't listen to our forecasters, our weather forecasters. I think it's incongruous that we don't listen to a mayor who creates a mandatory evacuation.
Right.
And I think it's really comedic that it took that almost absurd suffering. Like, that is crazy. Not if, but when you die, right?
Right.
I think that's comedic. And so I think of all of them, pathos is definitely the most persuasive, as in the case of the example of not studying for your exam because you'll miss out, as is the case with Hurricane Katrina. And so, like Aristotle, it's my least favorite one because it's the one that seems the most prone to manipulation.
Right.
And I think that ethos is really important. And so if you can build your credibility up, you can really use pathos in a way, suffering in a way that is beneficial, right? If somebody yells fire, you leave, you've run out of the room, right? But if somebody keeps saying fire, like the boy who cried wolf, right, you're going to be like, oh, that idiot, right? So if you have the credibility and you're like, guys, there's a fire, we need to leave, you're not using pathos, you're not saying you're going to die, right? You persuaded them through your own ethos by telling them that you need to leave. And so I think that my favorite would be ethos, credibility.
So, for a person that is looking to use humor to persuade, how do you build that out? Given the triangle. I mean, what's do you have a process of kind of like looking at how to build your humor ethos?
Your humor ethos, yeah, there you go, right? Yeah. Well, whenever there's a popular cultural event, I tend to look at it from that perspective. Like, is this funny because it's the person's logic? Is it funny because they're like trying to overcome suffering? Is it funny because it's just the person that's saying it? Like Rodney Dangerfield could say anything, and I thought it was hilarious. And there's a reference that our students wouldn't know who he was.
There's some. Well, it was funny because there are some movies that are amazing to me that like his movie Back to School, they made in the 80s. Yeah, it's funny to me, like some movies that because of Netflix
they're re-emerging.
They're re-emerging, and it's like, oh no, it's like I made my kids watch The Jerk with Steve Martin. They're like, I don't want to watch this. I'm like, no, you are going to watch this because we need to have this reference point that you understand where I'm coming from when I say this right here.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah.
If I'm going to sing, I'm picking out a thermos for you. I don't want you to look at me like I'm crazy. I want you to get the reference.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the case.
I think that's where we miss out on parenting is that, it's like, no, we give our kids too much leeway in how they build their humor library. It's like, no, you need to live, some of mine.
Appreciate the experts before your time, for sure.
So, but anyway, I digress. But I was just going off on a tangent on Rodney Dangerfield. But you were saying,
yeah. So to create humor, my brother actually, Drew Tarvin, wrote this in one of his books about the humor map, the medium, audience, and purpose. And I think if you keep that in mind, the medium being how you're going to deliver humor. So when I am in a large lecture class, I feel like I'm a stand-up comedian. It just comes to me naturally, and I can just pull on people in the audience, and it's very easy. But then those same students come just to office hours, and they're like, "Man, you're much funnier in the classroom, right?"
That's funny.
It's like, well, this isn't the situation, So the medium or how you're going to do the message is really important. My emails used to come across as a little everybody thought my emails. They would ask me something, and I would just write back, "Oh no, I don't think so." And they would, in person, they'd be like, "Man, I didn't mean to upset you." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Your email, it was like no, period." And I was like, "That's because my answer was no." And they're like, "Yeah, but that period, man, I could just tell you were angry." And I'm like, "No, period. I'm not angry. I was just giving you my response."
That's so funny.
So I've had to incorporate either little funny lines at the end of emails or include hyperlinks to videos just so people know that I'm coming from a good place.
That is hilarious. I mean, it's funny on you're obviously a professor of communications, but think of how that message gets misconstrued just because you're precise in your communication. You don't,
right?
Because I always look at emails like, it doesn't need to be a book. I don't need to write a book back to you. It's an email.
It's an email, right?
I mean, you want to have a conversation, call me. I mean, we'll talk about it, but if the answer is no, like you said, I just no. But people then interpret it so different. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So you have to know your medium. You have to know if it's face to face, your communication style is one way, and if it's face to face with 300 students, it's different than face to face, or even listening to a podcast.
Right.
So know your medium, and then I look at the audience is the A in the map, right? Know who your audience is. We're just talking like I can't use Rodney Dangerfield jokes in the classroom because for the majority of them, they're not going to get it.
Right.
Friends, on the other hand, is huge on Netflix right now. So I can use anything from Friends and they instantly get it.
Really?
The Office, huge.
Yeah.
They get it instantly. Friends is huge.
I didn't know Friends was huge. I knew The Office is huge because my daughter and her partner, they watch The Office, and I've seen every episode like 10 times. So it's like I've got a reference point with them on stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, no matter how much it's on, I will watch it again. You
know?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that's sad is 2 years ago, I had a student named Chandler, and I was like, "Oh, your name's Chandler. You know, there's a show called Friends," and he's like, "I'm named after Chandler," and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." In the same class, I had another student named Phoebe, and she's like, "And I'm named after Phoebe from Friends," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, have you ever even seen this show?" And they're like, "Are you kidding me?" The entire class is like, "That's what we watch while we're like doing homework because it's on Netflix." So they just put it on, and then.
That is so interesting.
But now it's just funny that show's old enough that my kids are named after those characters.
I'm feeling super old right now. Super old.
That's what I do, is bring you down.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Knowing your audience.
Know
beautiful.
your audience. That's right.
Yeah.
And then the final one was purpose. So why are you even trying to incorporate humor in the first place? And
right.
I think that's where the rhetorical triangle can really be beneficial. So if you're trying to persuade them to leave the city of New Orleans during a hurricane, okay, they're not paying attention to the forecasters. They're not paying attention to logic. They're not paying attention to ethos or the government officials saying things. Mm-hmm. They're paying attention to pathos, to suffering. And so in that case, find some humorous moments that we can maybe play to the pathos in that situation. But other times, you know, like if you're talking to engineers, know your audience, right? What's the purpose that you're trying to get across? Right. And then with those engineers, you're probably going to use logos a little bit more because they care that 1 + 1 = 2.
Right. They're very engineering.
Yeah.
You've got a brother that's an engineer. I've had a brother that's an engineer. You know, it's and what's funny is my brother that's an engineer. He's not as funny as your brother. I mean, what's funny is that with my brother, he's got a really great sense of humor, but it's really, really dry. And people, like, when he says something that's, you know, pretty witty, they his delivery is so dry, they take him seriously.
They don't,
and so they don't know where they stand on stuff with him, and it's really kind of comical to me, you know. So
if you're friends with the people that are like that, you get their humor, and it's hilarious watching everybody else look at them like, what? But with him, he's just like, I mean, nobody at work gets me. You know, I say this is really funny, but they just don't. They don't ever laugh. I'm like, that's because you always seem like you have a stick up your craw. You know, so say it with a smile. Maybe the delivery. Maybe it's in the delivery. Maybe you know, know your audience. Like you said, know your audience. That's exactly right.
So have you ever had you know, in the classroom, like use humor with no purpose? And we'll be right back with David Tarvin, Dr. David Tarvin. But now it's time for Fun Facts. Fun Facts is where I share facts about laughter, humor, sometimes the absurd. And since we're talking about education, this one is from Edutopia. And the fact is, laughter and learning. Humor boosts retention. Humor activates the brain's dopamine reward system, stimulating goal-oriented motivation and long-term memory, which means that humor can improve retention in students of all ages. We all know this to be true, but sometimes most instructors I've had have forgotten it, so get out there and remind them.
Hey everyone, this is Paul Ozinka, president of the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, inviting you to join us this May 14th through 17th at our annual conference in New Orleans. It's gonna be awesome. The theme this year is Diagnosis Happiness. So we've got experts from positive psychology, neuroscience, therapeutic humor, even comedy, sharing their wisdom on the relationship between humor and happiness. Now, of course, no conference can be all work and learning, so we're going to be right there in the heart of the French Quarter, so you can sneak off, grab yourself a beignet, and see all that New Orleans has to offer. Can't wait to see you there.
And we're going to get right back to Dr. David Tarvin right now. I'll apologize that some of the parts of this conversation are a little bit light. It was a big room, so you might have to turn your volume up and down a little bit, but it doesn't negate the quality of the content. So, hope you're writing some stuff down. This guy is super smart. So, let's get back to David.
Yeah. I mean, like
Okay.
if I am telling a story to maybe start the day off, I have a dog. Her name is Grandma, and I oftentimes talk about Grandma, and I don't tell them that she's my dog. I just let them figure it out. So like I'll start one day like, well, Grandma, peed and got in my bed last night and peed all over the place, so I had to put her in the crate. And some students are like, "I'm sorry, what did he just say?"
That's right. That'll get their attention.
Yeah, right. I have to cut class early today because I have to go get Grandma spayed. The look on their faces for that one was I wish I had a camera because it was just perfect. But so there's instances where I just throw.
But
in
even that, I
humorous
think,
moments.
even though it's like the element, that you could say there's no purpose, but the purpose really is to, get their attention.
Oh, well,
yeah. I mean, to me, in some ways, that element of whimsy, because it's, keeping, especially a large lecture hall like that, keeping, people's attention. It's got to be a little more difficult, so that, the stuff that you do, draws them in and, keeps them coming back. That is so awesome. So, I mean, like I said, my educational experience is so much different. I had never sat in a lecture hall with 300, I was like smaller groups, like 25 people. So you pretty much had to at least pretend like you were paying attention.
Yeah.
You can get lost in 300 people, so where you could, if you're sleeping, chances are you wouldn't notice.
Right. And 300 people you don't notice. In the smaller classrooms you do.
Yeah.
And I tend to do better with the large lectures. I think when you teach a large lecture class and you say something that's kind of comedic, if one person laughs, it's infectious.
Right.
And so a bunch of people start laughing, and then all of a sudden you do sound like a stand-up comedian because you have 300 people laughing or at least giggling.
Right.
When I teach small classes and I say a joke, there's no laughter, and that's because there's not that one person that kind of starts it off.
And there's not the like in a big group in there, there's more anonymity and it's safer.
Right.
It's so much safer to laugh, right? So in a small class like that, there's almost the peer pressure not to laugh because, learning is serious,
right.
and so it's interesting you bring that up because as a speaker, I noticed that too.
Oh, yeah.
I'd much rather speak to a much larger group because there's safety for people to kind of let go and laugh. But if it's small, 10, 12 people.
What's that person going to think if I laugh?
Exactly. It's so much more intimate, and they're like, oh, I don't even think that I'm weird because I laughed at that. I mean, so it's interesting that you brought that up because it's true across the board. So that's awesome. Now, for your, the work that you're doing, are you like working on a book that's going to go along with the rhetoric of humor? Because I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I have.
Because your brother's putting out a book a week.
Oh my gosh, he's driving me crazy too. And like I try and call him to ask, I need a tip for an improv exercise for class, and he's like, I'll call you tomorrow. I'm working on my book. I'm like, you just published a book. How could you be working on another one already? Like, oh, calm down.
You're like, I'm the professor here.
Right, exactly. I need to be doing all this book writing. Yeah.
But when I was listening to you this morning, and look, I was like, that would make an excellent. A book, especially if you're, taking it all and, looking at, how to, apply it. And I was hoping that I was like, oh, David's going to say he's going to put this out, publish this someplace.
And well, there's this weird juxtaposition because I would like to, but the medium, right? So medium, audience, purpose, the medium, I'm funny in person. Sometimes I don't want to sound like I think I'm funny, but I get laughs in person. But like I said, with the emails, apparently when I do written communication, it comes off a little drier or even sarcastic or mean.
Or mean.
And so there's this weird juxtaposition because I want to write something that's both humorous and accessible. Right. But being a college professor, I have to also make sure that it's academic, and so that triad is really difficult to navigate. So I have so much in writing and research that will never be, that's just sitting on my computer because I haven't figured out a way to garner the message in the exact perfect way. And I really despise feedback, positive or negative. I prefer negative feedback that's constructive. So here are the things you did wrong. Here are ways you can improve.
Right.
But sometimes, you say something and people are like, that was great. And I'm just awkwardly like, thank you.
That is awkward.
Yeah.
I don't like unsolicited feedback.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, if I ask somebody, it's like, hey, do you mind? I'm going to be doing this. Can you take a look? Give me a little pointer here and there. Because, but, people that afterwards like, well, this part right here could have done better on this. And be like, I'm always like, I don't remember asking. I don't remember asking.
You did, yeah.
Thanks, but bye-bye.
But yeah.
Now, I really enjoyed, like I said, I really enjoyed your talk, not trying to make you uncomfortable. Really enjoyed talking to you here. If you're open to it, people can they connect with you, outside, if they're on the podcast, like, this is a cool guy. I would like to know more about him. Where can they get them more David Tarvin?
Oh, sure. My email is dtarvin@tamu.edu. So Tamu, TAMU. And then my website's davidtarvin.com.
Oh, cool. All right. Awesome. So, there it is, David Tarvin. I didn't know you had a website.
Yeah.
See, now I'm going to be
It has
going
my
there.
AA Teach speech from last year up there. So
awesome.
Come back and watch that.
Now, I like to end with my fast 5 questions. So I'm just going to ask you these questions, just whatever's on the top of your head.
I'm not
all
gonna
right.
think about them.
Question number 1: who's your favorite comedian?
Ellen DeGeneres.
All right, good. Number 2: what's your go-to funny movie?
What We Do in the Shadows.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Did you see Thor Ragnarok?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
It was. I like all the Marvel movies.
The guy that played the Rock Man that's like, this is my friend Jeb, he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so he is the director of What We Do in the Shadows.
Uh-huh.
And so that movie is like 70 to 90% improvised, and it's just ridiculously funny.
All right, that's on my list now.
Yeah.
All right. Third question, what's your favorite kind of comedy?
I really like scatological humor.
What guy doesn't? I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, anything to do with like poop, I love. And what's funny is like I don't know if that's just a guy thing because we always think poop is funny, and because we're perpetually 5 years old or what. But thanks for the honesty on that.
Yeah,
that is awesome. All right, fourth question: you get to play a practical joke on your brother. What do you do?
Oh, wow. There's so many good options.
You didn't even have to answer that. Just think about it and do it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't want to give away the secret.
Number 5. Do you have a favorite joke?
Of mine
yours,
or
any joke that you like. This is like my go-to joke. I'm in a social setting. This is my favorite joke I like to tell.
You have to pause it because I have to think. I don't really have a go-to.
Oh, that's cool.
Joke.
I just like a lot of people. They have a joke they like to tell. Like mine, scatological humor. Why did Tigger look in the toilet? He was looking for poo. I love that. I love that. I love that joke. Love it. So anyway, thanks so much for taking the time out to spend a little time. I know I got a lot from our conversation and from your talk this morning, and I know the listeners will as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you go, David Tarvin. I hate the fact that I lost this interview for so long, but I love the fact that I found it. In re-listening to it, how I know it's a great conversation from my perspective is that when I was listening to it, I was laughing at the same parts as when we were talking in person. So, reach out to David, connect with him. I'm also going to encourage you to go to our website, aath.org. Check out the conference lineup. We're going to have a lot of great speakers this year, just like David. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't be sitting back in June saying, I wish I would have done that. No! Register now, while there's still time. So as always, this is Chip Lutz saying, we'll keep the laugh on for you.
Thanks for listening to Laughbox. If you'd like to learn more about AATH, visit our website at www.aath.org or email the host at chip@unconventionalleader.com. And if you'd like to be particularly awesome, leave us a review on iTunes. Or tell your friends about how awesome the podcast is, unless you didn't think it was awesome. And then just keep it your little secret. Or tell them it was awesome and then laugh to yourself about how you're going to be wasting an hour of their time while you're out doing something productive, like handing out heads of cabbage at a Miley Cyrus concert. Thanks again for listening, and may the farce be with you.